Yes, he's 8 months today.
Hi. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. It's like, who is this person?
Yeah, he loves Zoom meetings. It's like really funny. I think he thinks that like this is life. Oh my gosh, I love your shirt.
Oh, thank you. I'm
Is that
on
you and Kat?
theme. It is. I saw the Mito Mom shirt online and I was like, yeah, that's basically what I am here.
Yes. I know. I told my husband, I was like, I think like I need to like get some new clothes. And I was like, I just want to get like all advocacy shirts basically. Just
Yeah.
that's gonna be
Yeah.
my wardrobe now.
Yeah. It's amazing because like when you kind of put yourself out there, people come up to you and say, my nephew had mitochondrial disease and they found out too late, or you connect with families that I don't know, it's when you have a rare disease, it kind of feels so isolating and alone. And the more people you connect with, you realize we're a larger community. So
Yes. Oh, I'm
that's
definitely
why I think it's good to put it out there so people can feel connected.
yeah, yeah, definitely. Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like we could talk about so many things because you're like you're are you an oncologist? Is that your like
I am. I'm a
okay.
radiation oncologist. Yeah, I've been in Atlanta. I trained. I actually did my first 2 years of med school in Miami, and then I transferred to Emory, and I've been at Emory ever since. So I've been here since 2002. Yeah. How
Oh,
deep do you
so
want to dive there?
I know. Well, because I so my sister-in-law is she's in pediatric oncology, but then I think she's
Oh.
doing some like another 2 years of something.
So
Like
she's probably going to do a fellowship to
yeah,
specialize.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, that's amazing.
yeah.
Anyone who works in peds is amazing.
Yeah, it sounds intense. Well, and I before all of this, I was just like, wow, like how do you do that job? And now I'm like, oh, but like now I see, what have after like living in the hospital for as long as we did, I was like, I can see like how this would be like very rewarding work. It is really
hmm
sad a lot of the time, like dealing with kids who are sick, but also when you see them improve or you see them get better or you see like, you know, getting to know the families and stuff. Like we got really close with a lot of our nurses and our doctors. Like we love our doctors. So
Same, same. I have a special connection with our heart team. I mean, they saved our son's life. They have a special place in our hearts. And I mean, our son would not be here without them. I mean, I'm sure you feel the same way.
yep, yeah,
Yeah.
we're like that's like we every time we have a like cardiology visit, we're like, like you're our favorite person and Gilbert's favorite person in the whole world because you saved him. It's just like stop. We're like, no,
Yeah,
seriously.
I'm a total fangirl with some of our doctors. So like, and if I see them online, like on LinkedIn, I'm just like applauding how fabulous they are. So
Yeah. So your oldest, you said is six. Is he your oldest? He's 16?
yes, my Mito kid's
Okay.
16.
So tell me just about a little bit about like his life story and then everything with his heart. Like I read the like op-ed you wrote, so I got a little like preview, but tell me about all that.
Yeah, things were going fine. He met all of his milestones. He was an active kid. He was my firstborn, and I'm a little type A, so he was a little overscheduled, doing all the sports and music every day of the week. So everything was fine until when he was in second grade, we received a phone call. Um, that they thought he had a stroke because half of his body, he couldn't move half of his body. He had a facial droop. Um, and we went to the emergency room, and first they thought it wasn't going to be anything. Um, One of our really good friends was actually the pediatric neurologist on call. And he was the one who actually had to tell us that, we see something on his brain scan. And because all of his labs were normal, they said this is probably mitochondrial disease, but they couldn't confirm it yet. And so we were labeled as probable mitochondrial disease for 2 years before we actually got a tissue biopsy. They did a muscle biopsy, and they sent it for functional testing to see how the mitochondria work. And that's when we found out, yes, this is really mitochondrial disease. Because we, for 2 years, we were getting second opinions
Yeah.
and everyone, all of his testing was negative. So we just had that label. And when you don't know what's going on with your child, it's scary and frustrating and just kind of knowing what's going on so you know how to help them and help them be their best selves.
Yeah, so in that like interim period when you were trying to figure out what was going on, like was he having additional symptoms or it was just you were kind of like on edge waiting for the next like scary thing to happen?
So he had that one scary episode, and that one only lasted about 30 minutes, and we never saw it. So he was actually back to his normal self by the time the ambulance came. And then he had negative genetic testing that took about 2 to 3 months to come back. And so my husband and I didn't really believe the diagnosis. We're both physicians. And
Yeah.
so if we have a diagnosis, we need data to support it, and we had nothing to support it. So we weren't comfortable with that label. And so we were trying to find out more. My husband um, is in the research field. He actually has his PhD in neuropsychopharmacology, so he knows a lot of neuro people, neuroradiology, and they didn't feel comfortable with the diagnosis either, which didn't make us feel comfortable at first. And then a few months later, he failed I think it was his hearing test. And we didn't even notice that. Like in conversation, we didn't, so it was very subtle. Um, but that actually made it more suspicious for the neurologist because hearing loss is very common in patients with mitochondrial disease. And then he had another metabolic stroke where he couldn't move his body, he couldn't speak. And this one lasted a lot longer. It was a lot scarier. He was in the ICU. Um, and that's where everyone was like, this is what the diagnosis is. And that would happen about 2 to 3 times a year that he would have a metabolic stroke. So his symptoms were primary neurological at the beginning.
Okay. And is it because of the mitochondria in the brain cells like that you would be having a
Yes.
stroke? Okay.
Yes, yeah. So actually, your brain, nerves, and muscle, especially the heart muscle, require the most energy from the body. So in all patients with mitochondrial disease, and as you know, every mitochondrial disease can present differently, but both the heart, as you know, and the brain are commonly affected. So in our son, it started with neurological symptoms, and it happens whenever he was stressed out. So if he had a fever or an infection, um, and in the future, we found out fasting or certain medications can cause them as well.
Okay. Gosh, that is so scary. And also, like, to your point of being both in the medical profession, like, you know, wanting to make sure that you have the right information and figuring out like what you feel like the diagnosis is. What so when they first said like it's probably mitochondrial, like what gave you pause with that?
I didn't know anything about mitochondrial disease. I hadn't learned about it in medical school, so I didn't have an understanding about it. And then the fact that all of his tests were negative didn't make me comfortable with this definite diagnosis that that was the cause when we didn't have any proof of that. And so we started, at first it was medical genetics that we saw. And so we're like, well, let's get a second opinion with a mitochondrial clinic where it's run by a neurologist just to get a
Right.
second opinion.
Yes.
So we went to Boston Children's and they kind of said the same thing. And then we got an online second opinion at Cleveland Clinic, which said the same thing. And then 2 years later, once we got the muscle biopsy, that kind of confirmed everything. And then by that point, the young fellow who was our geneticist, she became an attending at Emory, and she ran our son's case by Marnie Falk at CHOP when she came down to Atlanta for Grand Rounds, and she said, "I want to see him." And so we started going to CHOP maybe about a year after the biopsy, and I mean, we've been in great hands with that team ever since. And yeah.
Yeah, CHOP sounds like it is just like the cool place to be in the mitochondrial world.
Shop is amazing. We just need more mitochondrial clinics around the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, we need more doctors who know about it, and we need more doctors to specialize
Yeah,
in it.
definitely. Okay, so then he had another metabolic stroke, and you said that one was longer, and he was in the ICU.
Hmm.
And then what happened after that? At what point was it, he needs to have a heart transplant? Like when did that happen?
So that was that was it's now 4 years ago. So he was having the strokes, the metabolic strokes, 2 to 3 times a year. And then once we saw CHOP and got started on our mitochondrial cocktail and arginine, he was actually symptom free for about 2 years. So he just had the hearing loss and we were doing well. We were still going to CHOP once a year, but then COVID happened. So everything was virtual. And when you go to a mitochondrial disease specialty center, they want you to see all the specialists because, there's mitochondria in all the cells of your body except for your red blood cells. So it could potentially affect any organ. So they made us see the kidney doctors and the heart doctors and the lung doctors and the endocrinologists and the eye specialists. And everything was fine. But when it became virtual, it was hard to do that.
Yeah.
So they actually did have us get an EKG where they thought they saw something, but it could have potentially been a normal variant. So just to make sure, we got an echocardiogram, which was normal. And they did a Holter monitor. You can hear my cat in the background. Meow. And that was normal. Um, and so we're like, okay, we're good.
Yeah.
Um, and then he went into heart failure 2 months after. So it wasn't even on our radar.
Oh
It
my.
was so sudden.
Yeah. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh. That's really scary. And I can like relate to that because I got fetal echocardiograms with Gilbert because I had an older brother who died of heart failure at 11 months. And so they like my midwives recommended I like talk to genetics, but they were like, no, the type of heart failure he had, we don't think is genetically linked. So they said, like, let's just do echoes, which to your point of like, we need more awareness around mitochondrial disease. Like, lo and behold, like, as soon as we got his diagnosis and I was reading literature on Barth syndrome, it was like, endocardiofibroelastosis is associated with Barth syndrome. And that is what my brother's diagnosis was. So, but his fetal echoes looked fine. Like they didn't see anything. So everyone was like, yeah, he's probably fine. Like he's got, minor tricuspid regurgitation. Lots of babies have that. Like, we'll do a follow-up echo if needed, but he's probably going to be fine. And then like within 24 hours, we were in the NICU. And then within 3 days, we were being airlifted to Children's and he had, severe systolic dysfunction. So, um, yeah, I can understand that where you're just like, okay, we're in the clear. Like the echoes look good. And then all of a sudden, no, we are in heart failure. That's so scary.
Yeah,
Uh,
it can happen so quickly.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too with a lot of the other Barth babies that I've gotten connected to. What do you want? What do you want? Um, like they go home, they're born, delivery's fine, they go home, and then at 2 months or a month or whatever, they go in for a checkup, and that's just this rapid decline really fast and really scary, and suddenly you're being put on ECMO, and it's just, yeah, that's really scary. So okay, so 2 months later he goes into heart failure, and then did you say he was put on ECMO?
They put him on ECMO within 24 hours. It happened really, he was at first they thought it was a virus because he was feeling tired, he was throwing up. Um, and again, it was all virtual visits. So they're like, it's just a virus. And then he wasn't getting better. So we actually thought he just needed some IV fluids. And it was hard to get a COVID test at that time, the PCR one. So we're like, we're going to take him to the ER. So my husband took him to the emergency room. I took our youngest to daycare. And then I received the call that he was in heart failure and they were admitting him to the cardiac ICU. Um, and within 24 hours, he was on ECMO.
That was so scary. Yeah. It's so like, uh, I don't know. It's one of those things where you're like, you don't want anyone to have to experience that kind of fear. And that, I mean,
No.
yeah, because I didn't even know what ECMO was until all of this. It's just like the things that you don't
I
know,
didn't know what ECMO was, and I went to med school.
right? Yeah.
I never had that critical care rotation where I experienced that, and it's it was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. And he was so scared. I've never seen so many people scrubbed in a room for a procedure in my life. Um, I mean, you have two ICU nurses taking care of your kid. You have one taking care of the kid,
Yeah.
one taking care of the ECMO machine. It's intense.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like when there's enough, like when there's suddenly a bunch of doctors and nurses in your room, that's like, you're like, no, I know this is not good because we have
Yeah.
this many people coming in here. Yeah. That's really scary. So, and then you said you dropped so you have three kids total, yes? So,
I have three kids. He's my oldest.
yeah, so
And when he
did you just have the second born at that time? So just the two of them or all three?
So my daughter was in kindergarten or first grade, and then I had a baby at home.
Oh my gosh. And then you're like, and now we're doing this, and then yeah, yeah. And you have to like figure out what, as a family, like how you manage that. Do you have family that lives close by? Were you able to have
I
the,
do.
okay.
Yeah, I'm really lucky. My parents both live here. I am the oldest of five, so I have a bunch of siblings here. Um, for us, the most important thing was keeping a normal routine
Mm,
for our younger two. So we would rotate who someone would stay home with the kids
yeah.
overnight. So they had a normal bedtime. Someone was bringing them to school, and then you'd spend the day in the hospital, and then we would do shifts. So during the day, we were both always there. And then I had family, if we needed to stay late or stay the night, I had family who could stay here. But just keeping normalcy, because it was so stressful for our daughter, everything that was she was going through.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
another topic in itself, like the children, the siblings of, I'm sure you can talk about that too.
Oh, yes. I've been thinking about that a lot lately because, my kids are walking around like talking about elamipretide and FDA has entered their vocabulary. Like, it, my 3-year-old the other day, we had these like Barth Strong, like, they're kind of like Live Strong bracelets, like they're like the plastic. And the older one came home from school and she was like, "Do you know what? Mommy got this bracelet from the FDA."
And she's three. And she's three.
And I'm like, well, good try. It was not from the FDA. It was actually from the Barth Syndrome Foundation. But like just that, they're trying to piece together through what they
Yeah.
hear, and I've been thinking about that a lot lately. Like trying to, I was like, I need to like, we need to figure out if there are already groups that are like this, but like for siblings of kids with like, I'm sure there are. I just haven't like had time to look into it. But yeah, I mean, because that is like you're saying, that's like its own discussion, what it does to a family to have a kid in critical care and to have something like this happen. But we did the same thing. Yeah, we rotated back and forth. So Andy and I did like 24-hour shifts basically. So we would switch at lunchtime and then
Hmm.
like so someone was always in the hospital and then somebody was always at home. But I mean it took a toll. Like it was really hard to watch. Like it's hard to see like how over the months that we were there, like their behavior changed. Like the 3-year-old regressed, like potty training wise.
Hmm.
Like the 7-year-old just got she was so on edge all the time, so
Hmm.
anxious, like about everything. And like it's just really sad to see how it manifests, especially like I mean in all ages, but yeah, in little kids where they're not really that's how they process what they're going through. And you could see it in their play. Like
Hmm.
they were constantly playing like Heart Doctor and like they had these really great Care Bears that they got from the Child Life department that had like IVs and stuff on them, and so they would play with those. But yeah, the 3-year-old got very attached to her. She calls it her Gill Bear. It's really cute. But yeah, yeah, I mean, it's just, and then as a family, you know what it does to you. Were you both trying to work at the same time too?
My job, Emery was very flexible with me. Um, and there were days where I would work. So at first I got to take a lot of time off, and then I was able to take some half days or come in late where I could round with the ICU team and then go in for a little bit and then go back to see our son. So, but they were flexible. Yeah, but it was hard.
Yes. I left teaching with our second born, so I was just staying at home. So that worked. And then Andy was doing like professional development, like education consulting. And so he was traveling for work for the past couple years, and he would travel out to the Pacific Northwest like every couple of weeks. And so he just like stopped working basically. Um, but yeah, there's been many parents I've talked to who like that's another part of this that I think gets kind of unseen is that trying to juggle work and trying to juggle hospital stays with, but you don't want to use all your PTO and you don't want to,
Hmm.
not all employers are very flexible. Like, luckily, he was working, doing consulting with a really good friend, and his friend was like, yeah, it's fine. And, but yeah, I mean, that's not always the case. It's hard.
I actually was not even eligible for FMLA yet because I had worked in private practice for 10 years and I just came back to Emory April 1st of 2020. So I wasn't even eligible for FMLA because I hadn't been there for a year. Um, yeah, it can break families like financially, emotionally. Um,
Yeah. That is another conversation too. I'm like, I think we need some different infrastructure around this. Like we always felt very fortunate that we were able to be at the hospital with Gilbert because there were a lot of families who I know like just couldn't stay because they were from out of state. And I just uh, that should be that should not be a thing. Should be able
yeah,
to
we
like stay with your kid if
We
you want.
connected with some families who lived 3 to 4 hours away, and so they were in the hospital with their child, and then grandparents or other family were watching their other kids. So they were away from their other children for days, weeks, months, depending on how they were able to rotate it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awful. So how long did he have to wait for a heart? Like how long were you all in the ICU?
So he was on ECMO. He actually developed some internal bleeding on the ECMO. You know, with ECMO, you're on a lot of blood thinners, so you don't have clots or strokes. So they actually had to take him off ECMO. That was horrible because they didn't think he was going to make it through the weekend, but he did. And then he got an LVAD, which helped hit the rest of his body recover. Um, it after the LVAD, it was another 6 weeks before he even got listed for a transplant because he just wasn't even healthy enough to receive a transplant. And then it was 4 months on the transplant list.
And that whole 4 months he was on the LVAD as well, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Usually once you get an LVAD, it is permanent and it means you're on your way to having a transplant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's wild. That's really crazy that it took that long for him to be listed. But that makes sense. I have, in conversations with our cardiologist about like what would happen if we still don't get this drug approved and like if Gilbert would have to get onto, if his heart function declined enough that he would end up on the transplant list and whatnot. We talked about like just how ridiculous all of this is that, we're possibly preventing kids from having access to a medication that has kept them with their own hearts because, you know, she brought up that yeah, your heart you have to be there's so much that has to go right for you to be able to get a heart. Your body has to be able to receive it. You have to get the donor heart. Like there's just so much that it's like if you can avoid and not have to do that, if like this medicine is enabling that, then like that's a really, really good thing. Because it is no small thing to have to get a transplant. Like I just sometimes it seems like people throw that around like, well, yeah, and then he could just get a heart transplant. I'm like, no, no, it's not. He could just get a heart
Yeah.
transplant.
And
Like,
that's not the end. I mean, a heart
yeah,
transplant is not a cure
no.
because then you're on the next step of the journey with its own complications. Um, and honestly, I think that's something we should talk about because, once you go through transplant, then you need to worry about rejection. You're at risk for infections and you're on immunosuppressants that not only increase your risk of infection, but they increase your risk of getting cancer and they can cause kidney damage. And some people who've had a transplant then need a kidney transplant because of kidney damage from the medications. And um, I know two families whose daughters actually lost their heart transplant because of something called CAV. Uh, it's called cardiac allograft vasculopathy, but the blood vessels can actually close off, and there's actually no way to diagnose it early, and there's no good treatments for it. So, I mean, there's other fears once you even go through the transplant. So.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't know about that. Like I'd heard like the term rejection before, but I didn't like really know like what that meant. But then also to to have to have that happen where you there's no cure for that, and then there's no really way of knowing that it happens until it happens. So then did those girls have to get like a new heart again?
One was able to get a new heart, the other one wasn't able to get a new heart.
It's awful. It's good to know that, this is not it's not a like this is going to fix everything. It's a continued medical condition for the rest of your life.
Yeah, yeah. It's the next part of your journey,
Mhm.
which may or may not be easier than the last part.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell me about like the actual like you get so how does what happens like you get informed that like you have a match or there was a donor or like what happens?
So, yes. And one thing I do want to say is when they think you're eventually going to lead down the transplant route, you meet with the whole team. So, as soon as our son was on ECMO and they were considering the LVAD, we met with the cardiologist, we met with the surgeon, we met with infectious disease to talk about, when they're immunosuppressed and what they can and can't eat. And we met with palliative care and hospice, and we met with nutrition. And it's like a whole day of teaching where it's like a mini medical school learning about everything that you're going to need to think about on this transplant when you go down this transplant journey. Um, so he got listed 6 weeks, I think about 6 weeks after his LVAD, when he was healthy enough to even receive a heart. He actually got kicked off the transplant list for a month because he caught COVID, and this was 2021, and they didn't know what that meant. Um, in retrospect, maybe that wasn't a bad thing because then maybe he got some antibodies. I don't know. And then he got put back on the list. And then we received a call in late July, and it's basically hurry up and wait, get to the hospital. And then it was almost, it was the next day before he even went back to be prepped for surgery. There's a lot we can dive into there.
Yeah, tell me about it because yeah, go for it.
Um, it's exciting. It was exciting that we were in that part of the journey, but it's also terrifying. And then there's so much guilt associated with it because your child is getting a heart and is going to be able to live, but then someone else's child's had, like, they lost their battle. And so you're so grateful, but then you have this guilt inside you. Um, sorry.
No, that's
Yeah,
real.
there's a lot there.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you speak about that guilt because that's true. Then you're like, well, this best day of my life is also like the worst day of somebody else's, and like what is that? It's so complicated. It's like you said, you're grateful that your child has that opportunity, that your child has that chance, but it's also an extremely complex situation emotionally. Yeah.
For the first year, I was trying to figure out how to write a letter to thank the donor family, but I could not encompass everything I wanted to say. And it's just kind of heartbreaking. Yeah. I I did become friends with a donor mom through Enduring Hearts. It's the pediatric heart transplant nonprofit for research for kids who've had a transplant. Um, and I felt so connected with her. I mean, I feel we're family. She lost her son at about the same age that my son was getting his heart. I feel very connected to donor families, and I don't know even know what to say there.
This is part of the reality that a lot of families live with for many different reasons, right? Like it's not necessarily just a mito situation with heart transplants. Like, there's, I keep saying to like, it's really hard to like put an analogy on what it feels like to like end up in this world of like rare disease and like medical complexity. It's a privilege to just be able to go to your pediatrician for your well checkups every year, and that's your only interaction with the medical system with your child. Things that we take for granted until you know. And also the feelings too of like how does the world keep turning and spinning, right? Like how am I still taking my daughter to school right now while this is going, it's
Yeah.
just there are so many layers.
I remember being upset when I would, people don't know what to say when you're kids, like in the ICU when you're going through this journey. And I hear some parents complain about taking their kid to soccer practice and all the things they have to do. And I would get so upset. Like, I would love to be doing that right now. I mean, I miss all those things. I miss the normalcy of life. Um, yeah, the routine, the little things that would bug you and stress you out are the things that you miss the most when your kid's really sick.
Yes, that is a perfect way of putting it. I totally agree with that. I wish I wasn't watching my kids' labs come back with these lactate spiking and these things that you're like, I wish I had that
This
normalcy.
is not what a normal mom should be doing during her normal day. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and and like when we got out of the hospital for a while, I was like, I honestly don't know how to interact with people who are not in the medical profession or like taking care of my child or other rare disease people because I was like, I just don't know what to talk about because that's the only people I want to talk to because that's the only space I feel like understood.
And all those little things that other people talk about and complain about, you just can't relate to. You're like, that's not what's important right now. My kid has an NG tube. I'm trying to make sure he gets a nutrition and we're going to physical therapy. I mean, I'm sorry, you can't relate to the things that just seem unimportant and inconsequential, like being stuck in traffic. You're like, oh well.
I know, right? Yeah, it's like, well, I'm glad that that was the hardest thing that was in your day. But, it is hard because it's like I feel like this is all I talk about it, but it's like, but how can I not,
Yeah,
Because this is now my life. And
yeah.
it is nice to see it. There are a lot of people who I think have really high emotional intelligence and are very good at like listening and like talking to me, even though they're not sharing this experience, they're still very like good about um listening, which has been really nice because I think back to how I was before this whole experience, and it's like, well, I hope that doesn't happen to me. Like I hope that's not my child, but it's like, well, now this is my child, and now I wish I would have been more empathetic and sympathetic before, not just being like, well, maybe like I hope that like that's not what ends up happening. So it's yeah. We need more awareness because there's a huge subset of our population that lives through the experiences we live through all the time. It's just, it's kind of hidden away. because you don't necessarily know that anyone has anything going on. Um, all right, well, we need to also talk about how you guys got elamipretide and what how that kind of changed things for you or what that looked like and how that's like impacted what your family's like your son's health and all that.
Yeah, so we were contacted through CHOP, Dr. Goldstein. We were able to get elamipretide through the expanded access program because, as you know, it was being studied on a number of different type of conditions and a number of different type of mitochondrial disease conditions. So they were looking at it for patients with primary mitochondrial myopathy. And they found that patients who had a nuclear DNA mutation had a benefit with elamipretide. And that's what my son has. He has a nuclear DNA mutation. So we were able to get access, and he started about a year and a half ago. And, it's been 4 years since this transplant, but his just energy level never really recovered. He just couldn't walk that far. He would get muscle cramps just from walking. He'd have to take a lot of breaks. He was tired. Um, and so fatigue was a big issue and just exercise intolerance. And once he started the medication, I think it was about 6 to 8 weeks later where he's like, Mom, I don't get muscle cramps anymore. And he can walk farther. He decided to join the tennis practice squad at his school. And first he had to be driven there, it was only a mile walk. Then he was able to walk a mile and didn't complain about it. By the summer, um, it was like kind of gradual. By summer, he had his first job at 15, being like an assistant tennis coach at Emory. So like his quality of life improved. I mean, this medicine wasn't around to help his heart 4 years ago, but it's able to help his skeletal muscle and his strength. So that just improved his quality of life.
That's really cool and really like nice to hear. I That's been kind of a theme in the past few episodes that we've talked to um either patients or like family members who have kids who are older or who are, adults themselves on elamipretide, just hearing the quality of life. That phrase has come up a lot. Just being able, like doing things that you previously were not able to do. And that's really nice. Like he can have a job because that's part of growing up, being able to like have that independence. And so that's really nice to hear that that's given him the energy to do that because yeah, everything I've heard from stories of Barth boys and men who have spent their lives without elamipretide, like that sounds like one of the more debilitating parts is the lack of being able to socialize and having the energy to engage in like work and extracurriculars and stuff like that. So it's nice that too he's getting to do tennis. That's fun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, he was a counselor again this summer. Um, he's a 16-year-old boy now, so he's starting to do weights now. Like I never thought I'd see him do that before. Like so he was doing physical therapy and then graduated to like sports rehab because he was kind of the oldest person in PT and he was doing that for years and he just wasn't getting stronger until he started the medication.
That's awesome. Yeah. There was another mom we talked to whose daughter does like dance and like gymnastics and swim, like all this stuff instead of the physical therapy because it was like this
Hmm.
makes more sense and is more fun for her. Um, so that's really nice to hear. So when you like when you got what was your like awareness around what was going on with the FDA and I mean how like how plugged in were you with everything going on with telemedicine?
So I was getting emails through UMDF and I was really wasn't following it much last year, but when at the MitoMed conference, um, we were hearing more about the delays from the FDA and how they were missing their appointments and how an advisory council had approved it in October, but they were missing their deadlines. And I was hearing a little bit about it. I honestly, I feel a little guilty, but I didn't connect to it 100% because I was like, this is for Barr syndrome. And I didn't really understand why they weren't approving it. Is it because it doesn't work? And this is going back to like my medical background. So at least in oncology, we have a lot more patients when we that we analyze on studies. So before we change something in our medical practice, there needs to be a phase 3 study. You're comparing it to the standard of care, and then we wait 5 to 10 years for results before for long-term data to make sure that this is safe. You can't do that in our population. You can't do that for rare diseases. I mean, we don't have the patience, and it's also unethical to take a medication away that's helping children and babies and patients with heart failure. I mean, it's completely different. So honestly, I'm not a researcher. I've never worked with the FDA before, so I never really understood. And the more I was learning about it and reading about it, and then as soon as I learned almost all patients are going to lose access to this drug, I really got fired up. I mean, we are Barr syndrome is one type of mitochondrial disease, and so, but we're all kind of in this together. We are much bigger together in one big family. I mean, we can do so. We're connected, but we're also can fight together. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's been really nice coming together as a greater mito community because it kind of felt like the Bar Syndrome like foundation and everybody with in that community had been fighting this for so long and had been working on this for so long, but then to like expand and get more people in, I think over the past few weeks has been really nice because then now it's like, okay, well, like there's this mito condition I'm learning about, and then there's this mito condition. It's like all of these, there's all these people. I feel like it's just like coming out like of the woodwork, like, well, I'm on elamipretide, or like my kid is on elamipretide. I'm like, oh my God, there's so many people on elamipretide. Like it's not just, Gilbert and the other boys at Barth, but like like, it has such a benefit for so many people. And could be used for so many different mitochondrial conditions if we can just get it approved and like get stealth them, stay in business so that we can keep doing research. So yeah.
I was not familiar with Barr syndrome. I had to do my own reading. Um, and I really didn't get into this fight until just a few weeks ago when I realized if this company shuts down, we're all going to lose access to this medication. So, they had the studies for Barr syndrome. They've also done studies for diseases like with our son, with like primary mitochondrial myopathies. And we can always access to this medication, and we're a bigger boat together. So it was really nice to feel connected with other Barth families and other patients with mitochondrial disease. Because once we started sharing this, people just reached out to me on LinkedIn and Instagram, and they also had a different type of mitochondrial disease, and either their child or as an adult they were on the medication elamipretide, and it was improving their quality of life. Um,
Yeah, I mean, we've gotten the news that hopefully September 26th is when we'll get a decision. But I know. I feel like we're all kind of collectively like, please. But yeah, what do you think kind of like from your perspective, like next steps, or what do you think?
so I wanted to say that I think all of our social advocacy and government advocacy that all of us have been doing has hopefully led to, the FDA, as people will learn, have there was supposed to be a 6-month deadline, and they sped it up to September 26th. So I am very hopeful. I mean, given all the promising findings that this medication can help patients with both their heart function and their muscle function. I'm hoping that it will be approved. I don't know what the future is going to hold, but I'm hopeful. I don't have an answer, Madison.
No, I think that's the same way I feel too. I'm like I'm hopeful, but I'm also like I keep telling people like cautiously optimistic. Like I think there's
Um,
you know a lot riding on this for a lot of us, and like I don't know. I think yeah, I'm like, I don't know what we do next if you don't get it approved because at this point it just needs to be.
It's, I'm sorry we had to meet this way, medicine. But I just want to thank you for just being there to like bounce ideas off of and just allowing me to be part of your community. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, that's like literally the phrase everyone always says, like, well, sorry that it's under these circumstances, but like, yeah, it's like
Well,
I'm so glad to have met you and connected with you,
I
right?
enjoyed
Like,
chatting with you online.
I know, like the rare disease families are like the coolest people. Like everyone is just like so understanding and there's like, yeah, it's wonderful to get to like talk to everyone, even though it is under like the worst possible circumstances, to your point. But yeah, I mean, there's a few families that I've connected with who are even who are in the beginning stages of this where they've got a diagnosis, there is no treatment. They're trying to fundraise to get researchers to take on their disease.
And then there are so many amazing stories of families who are unfortunately having to start their own companies to create medications and to learn about research and um, which unfortunately shouldn't be their role. Yeah, and we didn't share our story right away. We kind of kept it close with our very close friends and our family, and it can be so isolating and lonely going through that journey. And you connect with the other parents in the hospital because they get it.
Yeah.
Um,
I really did not plan on like talking about Barth syndrome, but all of this stuff with elamipretide really like pushed me into that space. We weren't necessarily very prepared to go down this path, and we were just trying hoping we could just come home from the hospital and try and like reset. Yeah.
Yeah, I never thought I would go down an advocacy path. I do not like social media. I don't know what I'm doing right now, but I'm just trying to, we're trying to support our kids and make sure they live the best life and do everything we can and just explain things to the community and to doctors. They don't know enough about mitochondrial disease. They don't know much about elamipretide or just the other treatments or lack of treatments for our kids.
I know. I was like, I'm never on social media now. I like live my life on Instagram
Yeah, I
basically.
like reactivated my Facebook account. Like,
Yes,
damn it.
I had to too. And my literal first post was like, I haven't been on here in like 5 years. Sorry for that. Like, here's a picture of my baby with a central line. Here's a picture of my baby now. Like that was my first post.
Yeah.
Like, hi everyone. Like, here's what's going on. Can you please help me? But yeah, I mean like, oh, it's very uncomfortable. But it like you said, like you're gonna do whatever you can in your power like to make sure that your kid has their best chance at growing up and living a fulfilling life. And if that means like being uncomfortable or being out there, it's like, well, I just have to do it.
That was a hard thing too, because when we first started advocating, I first started after his transplant, I started getting involved with heart transplant nonprofits. Um, And so I started sharing our son's story and with his permission. But things have kind of changed as he's gotten older. He wants us to share his story and help other kids. But he wants his privacy and he needs to have his privacy. I want him to grow up and live his own life without it just being violated and people knowing all these specific details about him. So that's why I'm not sharing his name um, or any other specifics. Um, and I've been trying to take down what I may have shared in the past, which is a little bit hard. But it's once it's out there, it's out there.
Yeah, same. Andy and I have had those conversations about like, well, Gilbert's a baby, so he'll probably look different as he like grows up, but he doesn't really have a choice or a plaster his face everywhere. But my hope is that like we are moving in a direction where the next kid born with mitochondrial disease has treatment options. The next parents going through this don't have to put their whole life on social media and that, the option's already there. We only have like a couple minutes left. I guess let's end with like, what is your favorite thing about your son's like personality? Like, yeah, what is something that
So my Fido kid is super sweet, and he is 10 years older than his younger brother. Um, and I just cherish their relationship. That was my biggest fear going through this medical journey, that his baby brother would not get to know him or remember him. Um, it's still my fear, but it was when he was in the ICU, and um, my youngest was only an infant, and it was COVID time. So they didn't, he wasn't allowed in the hospital. Actually, only one parent was allowed in the hospital at the time, but because our son was so sick, they allowed us both to be there. So it's probably 2 months before I snuck in the baby into the garden just so they could see each other when he was healthy enough to come down in a wheelchair. But I just love their relationship. It's funny because my 6-year-old, he will sometimes bully my 16-year-old just he's just so confident and independent, but I just love watching them play together.
Oh, I love that. That's like that's so heartwarming to hear. But yeah, that is wonderful. All right, well, it's gonna kick us off, but I hope you have a wonderful experience at the K-pop D.
Thank you. It's very important. I'm sorry. Tell the girls I'm sorry I couldn't meet in the afternoon. My
No
husband
worries.
got tickets to K-pop Demon Hunters sing along, so all 5 of us will be there.
All right, well, wonderful. Well, it's so good to talk to you, Heather.
It's good to talk to you. It's
I'll
nice
see
to
you
see your
online.
face. Yes, yes, yes. Or when you come to Atlanta to see your family, I'll take
Yes.
you out.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Bye, Gilbert.
Bye.